So this one's going to be a little bit different than all the other ones. I wanted to... I'm probably going to cry at some point. I just wanted to talk about really good memories that I have had with my grandparents on my stepdad's side. Because they've played a really important role in my life, and more so now that I think about it. Like, even more so now. I met them when I was, I think, 3 years old, which, even though they're my stepdad's parents, I consider them grandparents no less. Like, I didn't know my biological grandparents on my dad's side, so my grandma and papa through my stepdad have been the most involved grandparents throughout my life. And I love and get along with my grandparents on my mom's side very well as well, and love them to the moon, but it's been different with my grandparents on my stepdad's side. Like, some things I kind of remember, and other things they've told me over the years. Sorry, I have a really dry mouth because I smoked weed, and thinking it would relax me, and once again, it made me anxious and gave me a dry mouth, so that's not fucking helping, is it? Okay. Also, I'm probably not editing this. I think I'm just gonna post it. And, like, no, I'm not even gonna cut it up. Like, if this is 45 minutes long and I'm talking for 20 minutes, sucks to be you. I get to have this one. Okay, so when I was a kid, there was a ledge that I would jump off of in my bedroom when my grandparents were visiting, and I would jump off the ledge onto them, or onto my grandpa, and almost maim him by doing so. And I would do it over and over and over again. And he tells me that pretty much like at least once a year, I think. And they had this little sweet dog named Kaylee, who was just a puppy when I met her. And when she had puppies, I tried to hide her puppies in a blanket and, like, wrapped it up and tried to take them with me to go play or whatever. And my grandma caught me and, like, obviously noticed that I had a blanket full of puppies. And, oh my gosh, there's more memories coming up as I'm talking about this. Like, I didn't write this one down, but I remember being in the kitchen with my grandma and cooking lobster with her. And I think I must have been, like, 8 or 9 or something. And, like, because obviously she was putting the lobsters in boiling water, as you do, and I just felt bad for it, so I, like, tried to hide it under a cloth, and she was like, "Is that all of them?" And I was like, "Yep." And she was like, "I think there's another one," and then she, like, will retell that story now. Anyway, I used to, embarrassing for me, put the Barbie Princess and the Pauper CD on my CD player when I was younger and say, "Watch, watch, watch," and make them watch me while I would dance to the Princess and the Pauper soundtrack. And I also remember putting on a Belle costume dress, the long, pretty yellow one, and was using it as a cape while I was dancing. Like, the drama. Did not leave that in the past or in childhood. And ever since I was just little, they'd take me out on their boats, like, well, all of us, like my stepdad, my mom, and my grandparents, and my younger sisters as they were born after me, and take their boat out, like, on the lake every summer. And I have a lot of memories of doing that. And I was always at the very front of the boat and wanting them to go faster to, like, go over waves, because I'd be sitting at the front, arms spread open, like Titanic style. And I remember swimming every time that we did that. And I have a memory of being at the very front of the boat while my dad was driving it, and the wind was really warm, and it felt really pleasant because I was cold from being in the lake. And these are just all things that I wouldn't have experienced without my grandparents. And they taught me crib, and I could not get enough of it, so they would switch back and forth, like taking turns playing me because I never wanted to stop playing. And every single time that I see them, like for the last 15 years or whatever, they always just give me a big hug and say, "You look lovely," with the biggest smiles on their face. And I just remembered this but didn't make a note of it, and I don't want to leave it out. My grandma would always say, "Love you to bits and pieces." They were English, by the way, if that adds a little bit extra, like, personal to the story that I'm telling. It does. Anyway, words, not editing it out. Also, my sister's texting me and distracting me. Okay. Also, my grandpa is, like, the most clever man, like, smartest man that I know. Like, he's so fucking smart, and he's like a human Google, I swear. And my grandma's, like, the sweetest lady. I don't recall ever being in trouble, even though I probably deserved it many times. And I remember her lending me books to read, and for whatever reason, I liked to sleep on their treadmill when I was younger and when I was having a sleepover there. And my grandma found me fast asleep on the treadmill with the book she had lent me resting on my face. And I would always have a really big cinnamon roll with icing for breakfast, and I swear it was my favorite treat as a kid. And, like, I would scrape off every last bit of, like, sugar and icing and cinnamon that I could get off of my plate. Like, that's how much I really liked that treat. Which is really strange, actually, because my roommate just made cinnamon rolls from scratch, like, the day before yesterday. And I had one last night for dinner, and it tasted like the exact same, which is a weird thing to experience right now. Everything feels just a little bit weird right now. I remember my grandma taking me to the store that she worked at to pick out penny candies, and she would often buy me a Charleston Chew bar, which was one of my favorite chocolate bars as a kid, and would often have them there when I arrived for a visit. And, sorry, dry mouth again. Hold on. Okay. Anyway. Sorry, I'm just finding the spot again. Oh, and side thought that you would never know or be able to tell that we weren't related by blood. Like, that's not even a thought in any of our minds. Like, I can just tell. I've just always been their granddaughter, and I will always be their granddaughter. And they... Oh no. Okay. They encouraged me to ask a young girl that were their neighbors, like, to go play. And I recall being very nervous to do so, like, walk over and, like, knock on the door and be like, "Hi, want to play?" like, as you did when there weren't, like, iPad children. And ended up making a really good friend who I would see and hang out with all the time, like, very often as a kid whenever I visited their place. And I remember the first time I ever heard the song "Wanna Talk About Me." Is that by Toby Keith? Yeah. And for the first time, and playing it over and over and over again with this friend, jumping on the trampoline. And I still, today, have it in my playlist. And I wouldn't like it that much if I hadn't met that girl, and I wouldn't like it that much if I hadn't been, like, gently pushed to go and ask her to play with my grandpa. Anyway, you get it. They also have a really beautiful backyard full of, like, plants and flowers and trees and shit. And I used to pick cherries with them in their yard. And when I was little, I also had a book that explained where fairies would be and hide and how they behave. And I spent quite a while, entirely too long, probably considering the age, sifting through plants and flowers trying to find a little garden fairy and fully believed that I would. And I also used to nap on their super comfy shag rug relatively often. Speaking of places that were weird that I liked to sleep at my grandparents' house. And when I got a little bit older and I was in piano lessons around 11 or 12, I'd play their keyboard, and they would say how lovely it was to listen, even though I probably played the same 3 songs over and over and over and over and over again. They always took my sisters and I to the beach as they were born along the way, because they used to take me to the beach, then they would take me and my other sister to the beach, and then me and, oh, that's a cute message from my manager, sorry. Oh, thank God. Okay. Anyway, took us all to the beach, and I remember one time when I was like 11 or 12 and looking at a Okanagan sunset, like from the beach, when they took us there, and being like, I'm gonna live here one day, and now I do. And I just realized as I was writing these notes that I probably wouldn't live here if I hadn't grown up with them here during the summer times, and I probably wouldn't have this appreciation for where I live. And they had such like a domino effect in so many different ways in my life, and I've just been really lucky to be able to be their granddaughter and have them treat me as their own granddaughter, even though my other 2 sisters are their blood granddaughters. I've loved them so much since I met them. They're such amazing humans. Their house and like the places that they would take me and us were like little oases of joy, and still are. And you appreciate life a little bit extra when you're with them. Oh no, I didn't think that I was gonna cry till the very end, dude. That's crazy. This is gonna be interesting. In December, my grandma was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, and we all went to go and visit right away. And my parents from 2 hours away came to visit, and I went over, which is a 10-minute drive. I should visit more. And we all started visiting a bit more over the last few months. Still not enough, but anyway. My mom got her a gift basket with socks and slippers and cozy things, and sorry, dry mouth. Goddamn. Okay. Anyway, and my sister and I helped like put her socks on. And then we were rubbing her feet while we sat and chatted to each other, and were bonding over experiences that we'd had with my stepdad and her dad growing up, while she like just smiled and sat there and took pictures. And everyone's been taking a lot of pictures lately. And there's been like a lot of sad but also bittersweet moments in the last few months. There was one point where she felt a little bit frantic because she knows where the passwords for everything are, and she was going to go through their password book and try to tell my grandpa that, like, which ones were for which thing. And she'd get teary at random and apologize and say she's been overwhelmed. Like, of course, hun. I would think so. And one of the few times that we were alone, I told her that if she ever needed anything, whether it's before or after she goes, to tell me, and I would make it happen. And she teared up and squished my hand, and I teared up too. And one evening, she had a really hard time breathing and went to the hospital, which when I found out, I went straight there. And we knew that she'd be able to leave after a day or two. But anyway, when I got there, my grandpa wasn't there, and I hadn't told anyone I was coming. And she came out of the bathroom and saw me sitting on the hospital bed, and she started to cry. And shortly after, she said that she'd thought of me, and it was weird that I showed up, because she was like, I bet Kiana will come and she'll bring wine. And I said, no, just me and Gatorade. Because anytime that I'd visited the house, I'd bring her like a little glass of wine, because if anyone needs it, it's her. She also had this little oxygen tank on a small cart, and she said something along the lines of, it's such a pain, I have to take him with me everywhere. And I did a double take, because gendering inanimate objects is something that I do relatively often, but I've never heard her do it. So I said, did you just call it a him? And she goes, yes. I should name him. Who's the guy from Star Wars? And she said it so nonchalantly. It was so fucking funny. And I'm not a big Star Wars girly, so I just like guessed the first person that came to my head. And I said Darth Vader, and she goes, no, the little guy. And I was like, oh, R2-D2? And she said, yeah, him. His name is R2-D2. And because she's like can be quite with it sometimes and not so with it other times, I said, did you just now decide that and pick that name by yourself? And she smiled all proud and said, yep. And we giggled about that for a little while. And then she went back home after a day or so, and she had been having treatment, but then they ended up wanting to preserve her quality of life and stopped. So that was around April or so, and she was given until August at the latest. And I was able to paint her a picture of the view from their house and give it to her, and was able to see her a couple of more times, and recently had a conversation with her when it was just my stepdad and I, and then she came down from a nap and said, I need to tell you what I want done with me after I go. And my dad said, I don't really want to talk about that, to which I said, it doesn't matter, she needs to talk about it. And she said, I want to be cremated. And my stepdad goes, insert eye roll here, by the way, guys, cremated, but then there's nothing left. And I said, it's not your choice. And asked her where she'd like her ashes spread. And she said, I want you to wait until my grandpa goes, and then I want our ashes to be spread together. And I asked her where she wanted them to be spread, and she said a little like park near a golf course where there's a walking trail, and she wants them spread around there. And like 3 or 4 days ago, I slept in and like kind of had anxiety that day, and I was going over to see my grandparents and my stepdad and my mom because they were going to come, or no, sorry, just my stepdad and grandparents and my uncle. And by the time I got there, because I had been sitting at my makeup desk just like paralyzed by anxiety for whatever reason, just nothing even really important, just like was so anxious I just felt like I kind of couldn't move at the time. So it took me a long time to kind of get my shit together and get ready and go. By the time I had gone, my grandma had gone to bed and my grandpa had gone to bed like maybe 10 minutes prior. So I didn't get to say goodbye, and she passed away today. Which, I obviously had something else I wanted to talk about for this episode, and that was not it. But I just started writing down memories of them. And, this is going to be a really raw one. And how they've shaped me as a person in my life. And I felt like I would record this instead, no matter how unstructured and how unedited, before I go to my grandpa's house and see my sister and my stepdad and my mom, my other sister, and their dogs, and yeah, so that's the end of the episode. She's not very good at ending episodes, and that one's a little bit tougher to end. So thanks for listening. I'm probably going to be embarrassed about this one a little bit, because I was never really wanted to cry on this podcast, but you know, life is life. Life happens. Things are not all smiles and happy and sunshine all the time. Anyway, yeah, I'm gonna go. Thanks for listening, and see you next week for something maybe a little bit more energized and edited.